If there's a year to be in last. Well,
All right.
that-
Irene, are you all set?
I think so.
Wait. We're all going to have to speak up through these masks. We're good. Okay, then we'll call the meeting to order. Please join me in the pledge of I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Nice to see everybody in person, finally. Good, good, good. How's everyone doing? First of all, go around. Hi, Martha. Think that you can say hi to you. Everyone good?
Happy to be here.
Yeah. Yes.
Not somewhere else.
Yeah.
Taking a meeting.
Not working. Okay, so we will get back into our routines here. Getting ready. Liaisons. Board of Finance, Mr. Hine is here. Any Board of Finance related issues for you?
Nothing right now.
And we have Neil is here from the teachers union. How are you? How's the summer?
Great. Went by like a blur.
Yeah.
But yeah, not much except sort of just echoing from last Friday's new teacher orientation that just the community here and the work that we did with Paul and Mary and a lot of us together on getting it on the way for the years was pretty stellar. So it worked out really well.
Yeah, and I know I gotta thank you guys. I was away last Friday, but I think the collaboration and the understanding and the support from everyone just was great to hear. So,
Thank you.
Thank you. And we will go around. Let's start with Mary. Updates. Probably a long update.
Yeah, I'll try. We're going to update you throughout the meeting with information about our reopening. So I think our summer kicked off with a lot of hiring. As you heard Neil talk about, we had our new teacher orientation on Friday for positions that were open. And so we were able to welcome in a fresh crop of new educators for the East Hampton Public Schools. And I think we're really excited about our new team members and really welcoming them, and at a time when our teaching community and administration is working really closely together and really focused on providing our students the best possible experience this year. So it was a delight to get to welcome them in person, to hear about their backgrounds, to introduce them to expectations for this year, to give them a tour of the town. We were able to keep the bus tour tradition alive safely, socially distanced. So that really was a big focus as we were making sure we were staffing the buildings appropriately. Also, I think we spent a significant portion of time this summer really looking at the state's recommendations for reopening and making sure that we were prepared for every possible model of instruction, whether that is fully in person, hybrid, remote, or distanced. And we have developed those plans, and as you know, we are starting in the hybrid, and so I'll talk to you a little bit more about that, but that's been a big focus, is really designing each of those structures as we move ahead into the school year and being prepared for all options. We also spent a good deal of time this summer really digital tools based on feedback from the teachers in the spring, what worked for them, what they felt they needed, how we could make sure they were equipped with the right resources in order to move seamlessly between in-person, remote, or distance learning. So making sure that those tools are ready, that the teachers are trained, and that all of our IT systems are operating at top-notch capacity has been a major focus. Additionally, as you know, our building reopening schedules shifted when the state gave greater flexibility for further professional learning time for teachers, which I think we feel is very appropriate given the demands that they're managing. So redesigning that PD schedule and then planning for PD to meet the various needs of our teachers has been another major project. So, and then working at building level to ensure that all of our instructional practices are updated. Our math and literacy teams have been working all summer on refining our pacing expectations based on the significant disruption last year. and making sure that we can give new recommendations to our teachers about how to conduct teaching and learning in a very modified environment, and ensuring that we have resources for students that are individualized, as sharing instructional tools is less safe. So I think we've really been able to consider those issues from every angle and feel ready to go.
Before we get to the schools, on the technology, since you brought it up, update. So the status on the new Chromebooks and equipment, how's all that laying out?
Well, as you're aware, we put in an order for quite a few Chromebooks in June, right after the town council upped their amount in capital to $100,000. Unfortunately, due to our relationship with China, a part that was needed was not allowed to be shipped to the United States. So about 3 weeks ago, we had to very quickly switch to another company, and we are keeping our fingers crossed that they will be here early September.
Okay.
But that affects the new Chromebooks for grades 6, 7, and 9. Everybody else will have Chromebooks to start the year. But our new Chromebooks are unfortunately, we're just waiting for a shipping date. We've got the order in. We're not relying on China at this point. But because we were late in getting them from this particular company, we're in line.
And then turnaround, I know you guys probably work double time to get them turned around, ready to go out.
Yeah, I mean, Irene is ready to go at some point with our staff, and you know, they'll make it their sole project as soon as those come in. Now, it's very possible they could arrive right on time next week.
Yeah.
And then that gives us, you know, a week to get them ready. But, you know, keep in mind that, you know, that's 450 Chromebooks that are arriving at this point.
And I think working, you know, Rich and I work really closely because a lot of our teaching learning tools, you know, we're integrating into our systems. And I do think we're doing everything else that we possibly can now so that the team can focus exclusively on that project when they arrive. It's, you know, of the highest priority.
You know, ideally with a June purchase, you'd have them in early August,
Yeah.
and you'd be working on them at a relaxed rate right now.
Yeah.
But it just, unfortunately, it's a situation that we could not control. So when people, some of our remote learners were concerned because we're planning to issue Chromebooks to them on September 16th. So everybody was concerned about the delay, but our concern is, you know, we're looking at dates from the time the Chromebooks arrive.
Yeah.
And I think that it's definitely an industry-wide issue. The state has issued guidance in some of their formal communications to districts about the delays, and we were, I think, you know, I give a lot of credit to Rich for really quickly regrouping and finding an alternate vendor because other districts have not been able to do that. So considering all of that, I think we are positioned in a better place than many of our colleagues in other districts.
And if the Chromebooks arrive late, there's a plan, I'm sure, in place to transition the start of school to when the books arrive?
No,
During-
we are starting September 8th at this point, regardless of.
Oh, I know, I realize that, but if the Chromebooks aren't here on September and they're ready to go, there's a plan to,
Grade 6, 7, and 9 would start the year without Chromebooks.
and just do the best they can.
It'd be like the education you and I had, Jim.
Yeah.
Uh-oh.
Things I'm not to,
But, you know, keep in mind, because we're in a hybrid learning schedule,
Yeah.
you know, what we're saying is Monday, Tuesday, and Mary will explain this, Monday, Tuesday, for example, if you're a Group A student, you have live instruction on Monday, Tuesday. Wednesday is a synchronous learning day with the teacher and you doing distance learning right following the schedule, but at home. And then Thursday and Friday is independent work on the computer, with everything being due at the end of Friday or Monday when you return to the teacher. So it is problematic. It's not ideal. You know, we're not talking October. We're talking sometime early September or the second week of September for them to arrive at this point. And I hope a week from now, this was just a moot discussion.
Sorry I brought it up.
and for the record, I like my education.
I didn't mean to belittle the education
I
at
want
all.
to say I like my education too.
Absolutely.
All right.
Okay, now we'll go to the schools. Hi, Andy. How are you?
Hi, good evening, everyone. I hope you all had a great summer. Today I had the pleasure of walking around Memorial with Nancy, Paul, Mary, and Don Harwood joined Randy and I. We were able to kind of show off our hard work in preparing the building for a safe and measured reopening. Walk them through our arrival procedures, our dismissal procedures, talk a little bit about what recess is going to look like, hallway traffic, and even into the classrooms and instruction. Both Randy and I are feeling very confident with the work that we've done to create a very safe environment for our teachers and learners, and looking really forward to September 8th and that opening week to be able to see their smiling faces through their eyes, as Paul has used as an expression. And as Mary talked about, there's been a lot of work put into the extended PD, which I feel is going to be extremely beneficial just to get our teachers back in school, have them feeling comfortable in their space, working together as a team, and then really transitioning in that second week into a lot of new learning with instruction as we prepare to make this year as successful as possible.
All right, wait, Nancy. Follow up.
Yes,
How'd it go?
It was amazing, and I'll kind of repeat what I said earlier today. I found myself very emotional about the whole thing because it was hard to see what the kids are going to face because it's so different. But I was also just overwhelmed and kind of awestruck by the amount of work and thought that's been put into everything, and I'm really so grateful to everyone because I know a lot of time and effort has been put into it. It was really outstanding.
And we're anticipating, we just sent out, the entire admin team sent out our reopening plans that are very detailed and lengthy to families at 5 o'clock today. So we're looking forward for families to review them carefully, encourage them to ask questions, and make sure everybody's feeling calm and comfortable with our school.
I'd just like to add a shout out to our office team, which has been incredibly busy at Memorial for the last couple of weeks. Linda Miner and her flexibility with coming over to our office and the help that she's provided to our team. Kelly Crusoe coming in and really getting the ball rolling with all of our ideas launching here, and then Stacey Harlow, who has just been enrolling new students left and right at Memorial. So it's been busy, but we're excited to welcome learners back into the building.
Nice.
Yeah, custodial staff and front office staff have headed low this summer. It seems to be a summer full of checkpoints and different deadlines, and it was nice to have our guidebook go out at 5 o'clock today. I think for all of us, having children back in the building will be the medicine that we all need. I'm just so excited to see students back in the hallways, starting that opening week of September. So I think that's something that we're all looking forward to throughout all of this uncertainty.
Yeah, the middle school echoes everybody's comments thus far. Our fingers are crossed for not only the Chromebooks, but also for some power tomorrow. That storm did a number on the middle school, but hopefully that'll be all set for tomorrow. Happy to have Christina part of the leadership team at the school. She's done amazing work so far. She's a real workhorse, and she's smart about what we talk about and what we do, and I'm looking forward to really lead the team this year. We have some new staff members that are going to be coming into the building, so that's exciting too, to always have. And we're really just looking forward to getting a good kind of foot forward tomorrow. So.
And I would echo what everyone else is saying. I'm incredibly excited to see all the teachers tomorrow. And I want to just give a shout out to the custodial staff. They've been working hours upon hours to have the building ready, and the building looks great. We're going to be ready to go on September 8th. It was a relief to get our plans sent out today. It was a lot of work. Matt, Warner, and I and our team did a ton of work throughout the summer, to have a safe and measured reopening. So I'm just more excited to see our teachers tomorrow and then the kids in a couple of weeks.
Excellent. Okay. Any questions for any of the schools? Or? Okay. Thank you. Oh, geez. Audience of citizens. We'll do something different since we are live streaming. We'd like anyone that's watching, if for the second portion of the audience of citizens, if you would like to email the superintendent, his email is up on the board. I think Irene can get that in the camera. And then when we get to the second half of the public comments, then we'll read any comments that come in. Other than that, we have a couple. Time anything?
Sure.
Okay.
I'm Citizen Tinker.
First, I really want to thank the superintendent for all the communication and the board members in terms of all the pivoting and everything that has to go behind the scenes to be able to safely reopen the schools. It's no easy feat. I'm not jealous of any of you. So thank you for all of your hard work and effort. I do have a question, especially if it's maybe the first 2 weeks of September, during that Wednesday, remote learning, if you will, opportunity, that we can use our.
The Google Classroom. If it comes to that.
Yes. But it won't.
Thank you.
Because keep in mind, the first actual Wednesday, the live stream Wednesday, is the following week, because the first week is Tuesday, Wednesday A, and a Thursday, Friday B.
We just have to hope that everything comes in.
I am hoping and optimistic.
Motion to approve the consent agenda with all those previous minutes attached. Nancy Kennedy, Martha second. Comments? All those in favor? Okay. Unanimous. No recognitions yet.
No,
It's
we
a
have a
couple
lot of
weeks.
recognition tomorrow
Tomorrow.
at the convocation, and then at your next board meeting, you'll meet the Teacher of the Year, Rookie of the Year, and Paraeducator of the Year, and the second meeting of the month will be all of our friends of education.
Yes. Good, good. And our student Board of Ed representatives one will be returning, right?
Yeah, Robert Baldwin
Yeah.
will be returning, and then
Gannon Daly.
Annie Daly is our other.
Good. Good.
Rosemary will have a nameplate for Annan. I left her name and spelling on your desk today. We'll welcome them at our first September meeting.
Good. Good, good, good. Personnel has not met. Policy curriculum, I know we have a lot to go over, but any comments there?
We do, we have a lot to look at later.
Policy was busy in July.
Yes.
A few to vote on and a few.
Yeah, a lot of new ones.
Yeah.
Yes. Finance, transportation, building grounds? Nothing, no. I know the ongoing kind of question in the whole, the bus, the routes and the split, that's all worked out well with DECO and,
Yeah, we actually have not changed the bus routes. So Group A gets on them, and then the next day or 2 days later,
Yeah.
Group B gets on them.
yeah,
So when they do come together, they'll still all be reasonably sized.
yeah, good.
We did check the way the hybrid split worked out on the busload numbers, and it worked out evenly.
Good. Good, good. Learn. I should have said Amy's not here, she's not feeling well, and Amanda is away, and Jeff is stuck with work. So. Do we have to say anything about the building committee?
I have no updates on the building committee.
Are we ever going to?
Yes.
And the status of the turnover and
Well, I
completion?
believe because some of the money now is possibly being used for an upgrade to the baseball field
Okay.
and track and tennis courts, that the committee will still be in the background, not involved, but cannot disband.
Gotcha. Nope, that should get those done. And now we'll turn it over to you, Superintendent's report.
So just a couple of things. Obviously, I appreciate everybody modeling good mask behavior. And when you take your mask break at the end of our meeting, you'll understand what our students will be going through. I credit Andy that I know that he's scheduled mask breaks as part of the daily routine. And I think our kids are just going to get used to that very quickly. A big thank you to the Rossi Family Foundation. If you did not see this in today's update or on Facebook, Rossi Family Foundation donated 2,000 masks, enough for every student and staff member to have one. So a big thank you to them. That's a very kind gesture. So I thought we would just give you a quick reopening plans and some of the survey data. Mary's going to talk about what hybrid learning is, what remote learning is, and what the homeschooling option is. But just a couple of things. I've said to a lot of people that opening is not as difficult as staying open. So our goal is to be cautious. to make sure that everybody understands expectations, because it doesn't take too many cases at a time when there really are no cases. It doesn't take too many cases to set everybody in a panic at this point. So our goal is to have everybody follow all of our expectations and then keep our schools open. So if you've seen this on Facebook, you've seen this in my handouts, you've seen it in the reopening plans. This is based on the state model that says, you know, these 5 things, 6 things are the ways to keep your schools open. And basically it's, you know, just simple things of staying home if you don't feel well. There's another document I'll share with you that, you know, we talk about what to do if you have various symptoms. But we're asking parents to do a morning health check. Same with staff, we're asking them to give themselves a little health check. Obviously, face coverings are required at all grade levels. Initially, the state had talked about the possibility of pre-K not wearing masks. That has been changed. And prior to that change, we decided that even our 3- and 4-year-olds in the elementary school, because they were part of a bigger school community, would wear masks. So it's, you know, it's basically the mask rule. We're going to start communicating with families over the next 2 weeks. This is a good time to practice wearing masks for an hour and then up it to an hour and a half. 45 minutes at a time would be a good way to go. Obviously, we're going to do as much social distancing as required, and that's just become the norm. I think that's not a new concept for people to understand. Frequent hand washing and hand sanitizing. We've added hand sanitizers around the buildings. We've got stands. You saw it when you walk in. We hope to have enough stands for all the buildings. It's no problem getting the stands. The problem is getting the units that fit on the stands at this point. But we're going to have plenty of hand sanitizer and PPE for our staff. And then we're trying to keep the students on the same buses, so we're not letting students just out of convenience ride a different bus than the bus to which they've been assigned. Now, if a student rides on one bus in the morning and legitimately rides a different bus in the afternoon, that's not a problem. It's just the, you know, especially middle school and high school, the changing of the buses to visit a friend. We're just not allowing any of that in the early part of the year. So our goal is to make sure everybody understands that, you know, we'll open, but keeping open is everybody's responsibility. It's a shared responsibility for school to be a success.
Speaking of that, I don't know if you're going to talk about it. We mentioned it or brought it up during the summer, the nursing offices.
Mm-hmm.
How have things grown to get them prepared and what they need and the resources and...
So obviously the nurses play a key role. We've ordered plenty of PPE for them and for the staff that work with students with certain needs. Andy had his hand up, and I'll let him talk to you about his nurse situation.
Yeah, that was part of the tour that we were glad to show off this morning. We really started thinking, how can we keep our nurse's office for those who are actually ill, or not feeling well, or need medication on a daily basis. So we've created some satellite nurses stations in what are called the knuckles at Memorial School, where there'll be some privacy partitions put up, and there'll be Band-Aids or the ice packs that you can shake to get them cold. Those more minor things that many times are what my youngest learners are looking for. A place for them to get that TLC, get them back to their room, but really try to limit the traffic to the nurse's office. And in addition to that, part of our reopening plan in every school is to have an isolation room. So if there are students or staff that are symptomatic, we have a room dedicated to that, close proximity to the exit, availability to the bathroom, sink in there, and all of the nursing equipment.
One of the things, and Nancy got to experience this, that all the buildings did, because if you look at the bottom of this, we're encouraging parents to drive their children to school. We're anticipating it could very easily be 3 times the amount of parents driving and picking up their kids at the schools, especially the Memorial School. So each building has a very creative plan to get kids into the buildings. I know Andy and Chris are using alternate entrances in the middle school to get the students in quickly and, you know, keep the traffic moving. High school has a little bit of an advantage because they've got the 2 entrances, and it's a little easier to maneuver through the building.
Paul, can I just ask a question about the middle school? To me seems a big drop-off because you're coming off of a main road,
Yeah.
66. Are there any additional considerations as far as?
Well,
that
obviously,
goes?
we're concerned that 66 in the early part of the year as parents get into the routine, you know, there could be a few backups on 66. Some days, on a regular day, there's backups
Yeah,
on 66.
But there's no
I
need
don't
for
know if
any-
you want to talk about that.
Any
We have
traffic
to notify the
control?
HPD about it, just kind of let them know what our routine is going to be. You know, I think that they might be able to offer some assistance, but obviously that's not guaranteed with how many people they have on
Yeah.
patrol. But they are aware of it, and I would imagine that they would be able to do kind of a pass-through to kind of help out and alleviate that situation.
We're doing a safety walkthrough of all 4 buildings with the chief and with the fire marshal next Monday. And one of the things we'll share with them are the, you know, the traffic plans and, you know, I think the fact that we're opening a few more doors than is typical. And we don't have we haven't transformed a lot of our space, divided classrooms in half or gyms or other things in half. So I don't think there's a lot of fire considerations, but obviously we want, you know, their blessing on all of our plans.
Thank you.
So we're educating people on masks. This came out last week to the Department of Public Health. They're saying face masks that have the exhalation valve should not be used. So we've started communicating with family, please stick to the traditional face covering because the face mask with the exhalation valve should not be used. We're also communicating that we're not allowing bandanas just because the cloth material hangs funny, it doesn't fit snugly around the chin, so bandanas are out. At this point, neck gaiters, the DPH has not banned neck gaiters, even though there was some publicity that they may not be effective. In fact, they may be the worst form of things to wear. The DPH refuses to act based on one study at this point. So they have not banned it, so we have not banned it. To be honest, I like the idea of neck gaiters for young children because all you have to do is pull it up and then pull it down. It doesn't fall off your ears or fall onto the floor. So from a cleanliness point of view, it's easy to just take it off and it sits around your neck. When a kid takes a mask off, it's more work to get it wrapped around their ears and then keep it from falling onto the rug or something like that. So we are allowing neck gaiters, but obviously news changes very quickly in COVID-19. So any parent that asks, we are saying at this point, your children can wear neck gaiters, but if the DPH says no neck gaiters, then we'll have to ask families to stick to the traditional mask. Here's one of the things that we started communicating this week. This was put out by the state, and we've tried to take the state document and turn it into an easy document for people to understand. So here's what we're gonna be consistent in every building, in every nurse's office. So there's 3 scenarios. Here's scenario number 1. You have symptoms, but there's no close contact with a person diagnosed with COVID-19. So the symptoms are very specific and they're listed at the bottom of the update that I gave you this week. But for example, say you have a fever of 102. Now, a sneeze is not a symptom, but you have a fever of 102. That would trigger, that's a classic COVID symptom, but a student has no close contact with anybody who had COVID. You get a negative test and you can come back once there's no symptoms. You have no test, you either need a doctor's note or you need to stay out for 10 days. And that's not 10 school days, that's 10 weekdays and weekends. And then if you have a positive test, you have to stay 10 days out since the onset of symptoms. So that's the classic symptoms but no contact. It's no test, doctor's note or 10 days, negative test, you're in as soon as 24 hours after the symptoms, positive test out for 10. The next one is you have symptoms and in talking to the parents, you actually did have close contact. This one is pretty similar all the way through, regardless of negative, no test or positive test, you must stay out for at least 10 days since the onset of the symptoms and at least 24 hours after the symptoms have passed. So basically, if a child has a fever of 102 and we discover that there is a situation where, yes, the child was actually around someone, it does mean that that child has to stay home, or staff member stay home for 10 days.
Paul, can I ask a question then?
Yes.
So what would be the point of getting a test?
There would not be necessarily any point, except you'd want to know that, okay, my kid doesn't have it, but because they were exposed to someone with the COVID, they have to stay home for 10 days. So I think it's just for families to make sure that their child doesn't actually have it.
But it doesn't really impact anything.
It doesn't impact the timeout at this point. However, we would like them to get a test so we know, is there any repercussions for everybody else that was in that classroom? Now, we can't force people to have a test, but it certainly helps us if there's a positive test. Now, keep in mind, the last couple of weeks there's been no positive tests in East Hampton. If there is a positive test, a doctor's office must inform the local health district, and we would be informed if that person was a student. And then here's the other one. A person has no symptoms, but has come in close contact with a person diagnosed. It's the same type of thing. This is a self-quarantine for 14 days because ultimately the student or teacher could get it within that 14-day period. So what we're asking people to do is, if you know someone has COVID, please don't have close contact with that person, because ultimately, that results. And there is a description at the bottom of my update this week on what close contact means. I think the wording was, I'll share it with you because it's worth noting, I think. Close contact is defined as spending at least 15 minutes within 6 feet of a person with confirmed COVID-19 or direct exposure to possibly infected droplets of saliva or nasal mucus from a person with COVID-19. So, as you can see, based on what the state is telling us, what they're trying to do is mitigate the spread, but it does mean some of our staff and some of our students could be out for a little bit of time. Any questions on that?
So just reading this, so if a student came in contact with somebody and they find out 10 days after they came in contact with the person that person has COVID-19, then they'd only have to be out for 4 days? Because it's from the last exposure to the person diagnosed with COVID-19.
Correct.
Okay.
So if they get a call that, you were at Aunt Harry's last week, and Aunt Harry now has COVID, and it was 10 days ago, you'd have to stay out for 4 days.
And are we requiring any kind of, are we requiring anything other than the parent / student saying, this is what the scenario is?
Well, for example, we're relying on people to help us not spread. That's my first slide, keeping our schools open. If someone, says, I don't think that person really has COVID, it's not a close contact. I mean, we're relying on people to keep us informed.
Okay.
This is what the state is using as the metric. Now understand, the state is now producing another addendum to their opening that we should get sometime next week. Time's getting close, on what to do if you have a couple of cases in your school. Do you close? Do you send home a wing? Do you shut down one building? Do you shut down the whole district? We're going to give some guidance on that. But overall, this chart here is what the state is using to determine whether we keep schools open regionally, statewide, locally, etc. So for example, if we just take Middlesex County, Russ Melmed has said to us, if we have less than 10 new cases per 100,000 people, we're in that zone that favors in-person learning. Right now in the state of, in Middlesex County, we're under 1 for every 100,000 people. So we're in a pretty good place. If it bumped up to 10 to 25, then they may say, hey, just stick with hybrid learning. And, you know, even though we're starting safe, our intention, if we stay in that low indicator bracket, is to fully reopen on October 5th. If we jumped, you know, say Danbury all of a sudden starts to spread this way, we may find ourselves staying in the hybrid longer than we plan to. And then obviously, if it's 25 new cases per 100,000 people, chances are there would be a regional shutdown. I am not sure that the governor, unless things got drastic, you know, in the winter or something, would shut down the whole state, but it is likely that you'll see pockets, like different counties, doing different things this time around. Anybody have questions on that? So just to give you a sense of how we're starting, we had initially planned for three convocation and professional development days this coming week, starting tomorrow. Back in late July, the governor gave us the option to remain in hybrid, or just gave us that freedom from going to a full reopening to what he termed flexibility. So we opted for the hybrid, and at the same time, the state of Connecticut allowed 3 additional PD days at the start of school year. So instead of having to go 180, we would go 177. So we took that opportunity. So in addition to the PD days this week, we're also having PD days next week. The schedule on the board is a great schedule for teachers because we have structured PD. Nancy and Nancy were around today. You saw teachers already in their classrooms. Even though we don't have a scheduled day Friday and Monday and the following Friday, I think you'll see people just coming in and getting their classrooms set outside of the PD schedule. And then obviously our opening day for Group A students is Tuesday the 8th. Opening day for Group B students is Thursday the 10th. We start the week because of Labor Day with just 2 days of instruction. But then starting the following week, the 16th, the 23rd, and the 30th, those are synchronous learning days where students will log in, follow their schedule, and be expected to check in with the teacher for a live lesson on those Wednesdays. The survey results. So we are at the point where we did a non-binding survey in July. And we did after we announced that we were going to start in the hybrid schedule, we did a survey a week ago Friday, the 14th, thank you. And we closed the results this week. We had all but 200 people respond, which is pretty decent out of over 1,800 surveys sent out. At this point, we have 1% doing homeschool. Mary's going to explain the differences. We have 9% doing remote learning from home, and 90% of our students will be in school next week. Here's the breakdown for grade level. So the homeschooling, as you can see, the 1% is pretty small. 1 or 2, 3 in each grade level, except for grade 5, there's 5 students. There's none in 8, 9, or 11. So you can obviously see high school has very few students that will be homeschooling. And then the remote learning, which is the purple bracket. So these are students who are going to learn from home. Mary will discuss what that means. They are welcome to come back anytime. We're not like some districts saying if you do remote learning, we'll see you in January or we'll see you at the end of the first quarter if you want to come back. We are letting students return at any point that they feel comfortable. You can see this is kind of bounces around from grade level to grade level. But right now we have 166 remote learners, lighter at the high school, and kind of all over the place in pre-K through 8. I will tell you, based on our first survey, which we had about a 60% return rate, all of the numbers are lower. So as the summer has gone on, people feel a little bit more comfortable coming back. I think part of that was starting in the hybrid model. For example, kindergarten with 15 remote learners, and about 110 students with 6 teachers. On those hybrid days, you are going to send your child to a classroom of about 8 or 9 students. Now that's a pretty powerful learning model as we get kids back into school, as we try to assess their strengths and weaknesses since we haven't seen them for number of months. It's a great way for us to assess where they are. So, you know, the month of September is a real chance for some really powerful learning, academic learning, social emotional learning, taking care of our students, making sure they get used to the new routines of masks and lunches brought to the classrooms and new bathroom routines and new recess routines. And then we go into full in-person school on October 5. Any questions on the survey results? Mark, you're shaking your head.
I'm trying not to just be total.
Go for it.
No, I'm just, the whole thing just frustrates me beyond belief.
Well, you know, Mark, 9% for remote learners are, you know, the homeschool people are, for a number of reasons, are deciding they want nothing to do with the school at this point. They don't want our assistance for remote learning. They just want to do it on their own for a number of different reasons. But for us to be at about, you know, 10% of the students not coming back, that's actually not a bad place to be in comparison to a number of districts.
I agree with you. This aspect, this chart is encouraging, because I do agree with you, 90% is a great number.
Yeah.
My frustration is not specifically with this, but with just everything in total. And I could go on with my frustration, but it's pointless and unproductive.
So let's make you feel better. So we have a very good September. September continues as is, you know, with low transmission rates. Our kids come back, they know the routines, and, you know, by October 5, the first week of October, we are back with 90% of our students coming every single day. And as COVID continues to go down, rates continue to go down, you know, maybe we go back into the cafeterias and things like that. If COVID continues to go up, you know, we go back to a hybrid, or we're prepared to jump into distance learning. We know we're going to do distance learning a little bit different than we did last year. We've already had talks with the union, and in our meetings, we've agreed that about 50% of the instruction would be online and 50% would be synchronous. So I think we've got everything covered. And, you know, a lot of the decision making is beyond the people in this room.
I understand.
You know,
that's part of my concern. You said you adjust it, you get to, well, actually you can't get to it because the state hasn't provided the guidelines. But what are the parameters for reactions if there's one positive test?
Right.
If there's a positive test in East Hampton, and let's say the kid's one of the remote learners, is the state going to say, well, you had a positive test in your school population, and now you have to react to it? It's those types of things that I'm afraid that there's not going to be a lot of the ability to have any kind of thoughtful approach to it, and it's the state saying, here you go.
Yeah.
Sure.
And you got to do this. And it's just, I mean, I appreciate all the phenomenal effort that everybody's gone through. And maybe I'm just obstinate about this aspect of it, but I'm convinced that as hard as we may try to do stuff, for a K through 5 child, dealing with a remote learning situation is just not really fun. And I balance that with what I believe the risks are. And I think our whole society has got completely out of balance. That's again my own personal take.
No, and to your point, Mark, some districts began with their elementary kids going back full time and only doing the hybrid model for the middle school and high school. I just feel like for us that, in a small community, it's like, why are we throwing all our elementary kids back? Why? For families, everybody needs to be on the same schedule.
Yeah, no, I understand. I mean, it's interesting. What interesting for me is remote learners. The high school numbers are the lowest, and that's the group that is probably more capable of being able to be productive in a remote learning situation. And, so I
Well, it's just reflecting parents' choice.
right, no, I understand.
And that's
I
great for them
understand,
to
and
have
that's-
that option.
Again, I'm just gonna rant.
And Mark,
Is it being taken?
once the state said that we had to provide a remote learning option, I was concerned that we'd be at 25 or 30%. If the state had said, no, you can only have a remote learning option if your family falls into these categories, we would have a lot less. The homeschooling numbers might have jumped up a little.
Right.
But, in all my messaging to families are, wait and see what happens. And then when you want to come back, we will let you come back. We're not saying you picked remote learning, you're stuck in it until January if that's what you wanted. We're saying, we're going to do a very good job with remote learning, but there's no substitute like being in real learning.
And let me be clear, my frustration has absolutely nothing to do with anything anybody in our district is doing to try to work within the parameters that the state has allowed us to work. It has nothing to do with that. It's just, it may be unique to me or my stubbornness or pigheadedness or whatever it may be, but I'm
So anyway, I certainly thank our families for responding back. If anybody's watching this and you did not respond to the survey and you are not planning to come back full-time, anybody that did not respond, we've counted them as an in-person learning. You should contact your principal or your school right away. Nancy is modeling the desk shield. This was a picture from our tour today. So you can see that, these desk shields are just an extra layer of protection. And we bought enough for all of Center School and all of Memorial School. We have several left if teachers want to use them in smaller middle school and high school classes. But this is primarily for the elementary teacher that, is going to go right over and help the child. It's just one extra layer of protection. I know the teachers are eager to decorate them, and one of our preschool classes, they are already decorated. So it's just nice to see. We've cut back on the number of tables, and even students who sit at various tables have these, kind of positioned around the table. Any questions on that? Let's jump to, I'm going to let Mary take this over and talk to you about in-person hybrid learning versus remote learning versus temporary homeschool learning. And Mary, when you want the chart, you can just forward it.
I'm going to invite you in your packets. You have a handout that I'll speak to, and it says East Hampton Public Schools hybrid model. Oh, sorry.
I'm modeling good sharing of materials.
So as I talked about earlier, we've been trying to define each type of learning track and then be prepared for that. Temporary homeschooling I'm not going to spend as much time on because as defined in the reopening plan, it's really for families who are selecting temporarily to direct their own students' learning, who are not prepared yet to fully withdraw as is typical in homeschooling. But found in the spring, there's a number of variables that can affect this for families. That distance learning with accountability to the school in that structured way was unproductive for the learner. It's a temporary solution. As the district moves back to full in-person learning in October, families will have to transition. So I'll spend most of my time on the hybrid option, which is how we're starting, and how we're going to support remote learners for that 9% who decided that that's the fit for them. So you can see here on the slide the schedule for the hybrid plan. I think it's important to note that this was adopted in a somewhat regional manner so that there's alignment between school districts, but we have students who are Group A coming on Monday and Tuesday. Wednesday, all students are doing a highly synchronized distance learning model that's really specific to the hybrid plan. And then Thursday and Friday, the A students stay home and the B group students are in school. So a learner would either have 2 days in person, 1 very synchronized distance learning day, and then 2 days at home, or the opposite, 2 days at home, very synchronized learning day, and then 2 days in school. Our teachers will focus on the in-school days on direct instruction with the students, on conferring with individual learners, and on gauging where those learners are in relation to our learning targets for students each year. They'll also really focus heavily in September on building student capacity around new routines and protocols in the building and focusing on relationships. One of the things that I always reflected on last spring was that our teachers, who I can't give enough credit to, were able to do in many ways what they were able to do because they knew their learners. Whether you're talking about a 1st grader or an 11th grader, having a close relationship with your teacher is really a foundational component of the classroom and the learning process. So as we welcome our students back, we want to make sure that they have an opportunity to identify what that student's experience was during the disruption last spring, make sure we can assess where they are as a learner and connect them with the right supports. So those 2 days in school are going to be really critical. We want to keep that momentum going on Wednesdays, so we have adopted a synchronized schedule. Really at the secondary level, our middle and high school students, Mark, as you said, we can expect that they can navigate that. They're going to really follow almost a slightly modified but very close schedule as if they were in school. So they'll be on with all of their classes. Teachers have a little bit of flexibility there to determine, are they bringing the whole class together on Wednesdays, or might they meet with the A group for a portion and the B group for a portion? Because from a lesson plan perspective, the students are not going to be in exactly the same place. Depending on the course, the subject matter, and the particular unit, the teacher's going to need a little discretion there. And so we've built the schedule if you're seeing the whole class, what time are you meeting with them, versus if you're going to break them into 2 smaller groups. At the K-5 level, our teachers will also hold at least 5 sessions for learners in their class, a morning meeting with all of our young learners so they can check in with the teacher to bring that community of learners together, and then making sure that students have a reading group and a math group. And the teacher can hold 1 for A students, 1 for B students in each of those content areas. On the independent or more self-directed learning days, the teachers will prepare lessons the students can move through at home. Some of those will be based on digital systems that we're working with. We did ensure that teachers have access to their curriculum in a digital format. So, particularly in September, something that's important to remember is, particularly K-8, we start the year with some level of reconnection and review in a typical school year. And so we don't move from welcome back, it's the first day, to have all of this homework usually. It's kind of a slow build. So we'll be very thoughtful about what they're working on at home. It's a great opportunity if we found that a child did have some disruption to their acquisition of learning last spring, that they can do some review and get some repetition of skills and content. For example, all of our teachers for their math curriculum will have access to the previous year's online curriculum, and they can really target that work as needed for the students in their class and in their care. On those days, when we look at best practice in the field of distance learning, we can't expect that the students would have, exactly 6 hours of work as they would if they were in school, because they don't have that much actually when they're in school. There's transition time, there's other activities. But we'll ensure that they have meaningful work that they can move through on those 2 days. And our goal is to ensure that by the end of September, students are reconnected to their learning environment and to their school community, that they've established an important relationship with their teacher, that the teacher's been able to do and conduct some assessments to inform teaching throughout the school year, as well as getting the students back into academic routines. Mark, in terms of those concerns, I think every teacher and educator in the district is really interested in seeing the students get back into some routine and reconnect, and that September is going to be a good chance for us to do that in smaller groups. to really get to see where students are at. And I think there are a number of changes to the school environment that'll help us to really navigate with students and also to troubleshoot. If we find something, we try to anticipate everything, to have a plan for everything. And I'm really confident in this team, but I also know there'll be things that we find didn't go quite as planned. And then that gives us a window of time to problem solve in a way that I think my hope is really develops trust from the community, and where people are feeling hesitant, they can see those solutions working and how we've adapted everything from parent pickup to food services to how you fill a water bottle to be safe and contactless.
Yeah, Mary, if I could ask you a question. So you, students are going to come in, you're going to be assessing where they are. Mm-hmm. How long do you think that assessment period will be?
So normally we conduct a variety of assessments over the month of September. So I'm in the process of finalizing the assessment calendar because I don't want to start on day one with assessments. So I think we're looking more towards the second half of September into the first week of October. It's usually about a 3-week period under a non-hybrid model. So we'll have to take a little bit of feedback from the teachers if they feel it's doable. But I would expect, my hope would be by Columbus Day we've got all of those behind us. And that's different for different age levels.
Right.
We try and have multiple data points to ensure that we feel really confident in the data. And so that when you're looking at primary learner, we're looking at more discrete skill acquisition versus an 8th grade student, where we're looking more at are they integrating their skills and knowledge in reading and math, and that might go a little bit faster. And our K1 students, we might need to take a little bit more time just to pace it out appropriately for them as well.
Thank you.
But if I can offer, that's our formal process. I think our teachers will have a strong sense of where their learners are within a couple of weeks. Questions about the hybrid model? Okay. And it goes into more detail about what that synchronous versus asynchronous learning is. We will be, I'll just, kind of jump on the bottom of the second page. I've provided for you there the schedule in terms of the student schedule each day. And then some of the features I want to make sure you're aware of is in this hybrid opening, we are really looking to move back to the kind of accountability structures we normally offer. So we'll be taking attendance, carefully as the students are supposed to be in school, and even on those synchronous Wednesdays, are they engaging? Did they attend their meetings? And we'll treat that as typical attendance. Assessment and grading will start to move back into those systems in a more typical way. We're really focused on our curriculum and making sure that we're identifying any learning gaps and meeting those needs and developing learning plans appropriate to student needs. Everything will be provided by the district, and we'll have that Chromebook piece in place as those learners come through. Okay. I'm going to transition to the remote learning description, and feel free to ask any questions as we go. Obviously, we're talking about 9% of our students who have chosen remote learning to start the year, and we'll see where they as Paul said, and I just want to highlight, they are invited to contact us if they want to return. We'll set a reasonable target very quickly to get that learner back in. I think some districts are really saying, if you're not coming back right away, you gotta wait till January 1 or the end of the first quarter. So our remote learners have that ability to flex back into the school if that feels appropriate. We adopted different approaches for K-5 versus 6-12 in remote learning, where students are really at home and have less opportunity for synchronous learning with our classroom educators because they'll be delivering instruction. So K-5, we feel that we have the learning resources and digital platforms to support access to our curriculum, and we will have a remote learning coordinator for each grade K-5 who will develop a weekly plan. Basically, it'll be a digital template that goes out to students with their math, reading, writing, word study, and links directly to activities and tasks, virtual lessons that they can access to make sure they're gaining those grade level skills. The State Department of Ed did complete a partnership with a program called Wide Open School, and we'll use those State Department provided resources for access to social studies and science units of study. Our remote learning coordinators will check in with families, they'll monitor student work completion, and monitor the students' engagement for attendance purposes. Any questions about K-5? At the 6-12 level, we have partnered with Ingenuity, which is an online curriculum provider. Really at the 6-12 level, students are having a much more diversified experience than they do K-5. K-5, we plan in teams, we deliver a first grade, a third grade, a fifth grade experience, and individual teachers are responsive to students. But once you're talking about a 7th grader or an 11th grader, their schedule can look wildly different. And making sure that we could still provide a high quality option to families that really felt remote learning was the best choice for them, and give them a range of courses that they could enroll in was important. Our high schoolers have less time with us, and every year that their schooling is disrupted, it could affect the transcript that they're trying to develop for their next stage in their educational or career planning. So for example, if a student wanted to take AP Bio and we said, oh, we can't offer that, we didn't feel that would really be fair and meeting those needs. So Ingenuity is a vetted online curriculum library that allows you access to courses, including world languages and AP courses. It won't have the same suite of related arts courses that we have here, but it does have some courses that students can select from. So we really felt it was a great way to meet those remote learner needs. We will have remote learning coordinators in the content areas at the middle school and high school. They will handle making sure that the student is engaging appropriately on the Ingenuity platform for attendance purposes, as well as grading the work that the students complete. And we already have team members from our teaching staff who are applying for those positions. Any questions about the 6-12 remote learning option?
In the second paragraph, it says, in bold, temporarily offer online courses. Did we purchase a certain number of seats or something for this?
We have partnered with them for a site license, but Ingenuity, when we emphasize temporarily, it's not a option that will always be available in the East Hampton Public Schools. For this year, where the State Department of Education has required that we provide a remote learning option, the temporary nature of it is connected to that state guidance. So
we've also been informed by the State Department of Education that this remote learning option may not be available the entire year. It may reach the point where the governor says everybody needs to go back to school. School districts are no longer expected, nor will it count for children's attendance if they are in remote learning versus in-person education. Now, who knows if that's just a sentence, but in more than one meeting, people have used the word temporary remote learning.
yeah, I think we felt it was important to emphasize that based on the fact that the offering of remote learning could shift based on the state's guidance.
Gary, question about remote learning in general. Do you find any really great heartfelt stories about parents who have done the home learning and they've found it to be a wonderful experience? They're bonding better with their kids. They really appreciate the time spent. Are there good stories you can share? Have you been told? Nothing's better than a parent's love to their kid by learning anything whether
Yeah.
you're a kindergartner or an adult. Any good stories of that?
Yeah, I think I've talked mostly with families about their experiences in the spring, and I think families were not expecting that scenario, and so they had to respond really quickly to potentially their family structure, their work schedule, while also integrating their child's full learning experience into their home life. More of the families I talked to found that to be challenging, but I think it was really because of the timeline and immediacy of all of these things that had to change without a lot of warning. I think as families reflect this summer, there were things that they really enjoyed. A lot of families have talked about how it was exciting to really get to see their child be independent or interact. A number of families talked about, like, my child adapted so quickly. That was so exciting to see that they could take this direction, and because the school system provided those adjustments quickly, we were able to get right into the routine. I think a lot of families have found a slower pace in some of the new circumstances and have really enjoyed that quality time. But I think it'll be really something that we'll get new feedback on this fall, because now people are making a choice, so they have some control over the situation, which I think in the spring not everybody felt. And a lot of families have been very thoughtful in their conversations with me about what would work best for their learner, really wanting to understand their choices so that they could make sure that the scenario that they selected really met their child's needs. And I look forward to hearing how the solutions we've created meet those needs. And I expect that because of the fact that they had choice and they had a say in the process, that we'll hear positive feedback.
I have a question. Can you just speak from at both levels about the staffing in terms of the remote learning coordinators? Are they, because I know if every child has a seat in the classroom, it doesn't necessarily make sense that you're pulling one teacher from every grade level. Just want to make sure that you have those covered. Like where is that coming
Sure.
from?
The remote learning coordinator is an optional position that teachers sign up for on top of their existing teaching duties. And at the elementary level, our teachers plan collaboratively, and we felt that because of the resources they have access to, for example, we use the Teachers College Units of Study in Reading and Writing. Teachers College made a companion virtual tool for that, which we partnered with them around. And so that's going to really support our teachers in the classroom. It's going to support the hybrid days when kids are home, but it also works really well for remote learning. So we tried to find, particularly K-5, really seamless solutions that regardless of what we had to pivot in or out of, teachers could use. And I felt it was important that our teachers did a great job in the spring learning new strategies to share their instruction, but they spent a lot of time developing those things, and we wanted to free them up to really focus on more individualized instruction. So the elementary teams are already planning, and I think they can side by side a lot of that planning for the remote learners. But it's a teacher who's choosing that role, who wants that work on top of.
That was my question.
And we are offering a stipend for doing that.
Yeah, it's compensated.
We'll be taking it from that paltry amount that we were given by the state. I don't know if you looked at the funding. It's just, Mary and I and Karen, it was one of those things where the state in one form, just fill in the blank, no accountability, just list how much money you need for this, 5 categories, with no explanation of a formula, no accountability on how much we put in. I will tell you that I put in $1.6 million, and we got 80,000. Towns that are much wealthier than ours ended up with $500,000, $600,000, $700,000. There's been no explanation. And it's embarrassing that the state chose to take such important dollars and just say, get it to us quickly, and then just as rapidly pass it out to towns with no rhyme or reason. Thank you for opening the door for me to say that.
Yeah. I think he had to vent too, Mark,
It's going around.
Yeah, it is.
I got my inspiration from Mark Lambert tonight.
The last thing I'll point out is when we gave families the remote learning information, we also stressed their responsibilities in that process of facilitating the learning, that attendance will be monitored, and that families really needed to feel they could help facilitate that we would provide instructional materials, but that supervision was required. So people could really understand their role in that process.
Can I ask you, so relative from remote learning, let's just make the assumption that the remote learning lasts the entire year. All right, there's no changes from government law and makes any change. How do we assess the students?
There's a number of ways. So far the state has said for any state assessments that students are going to be expected to attend in school to conduct them.
Okay.
So for a major state subject assessment that would have to be navigated as we get a little bit closer. Our internal diagnostic tool that we use, for example, in grades K through 8, can be completed remotely. The vendor that we work with has made some changes. We can do some of the reading assessments where we listen to a reader over a Google Meet. Ingenuity has assessments built into the platform, including some measures to ensure academic integrity. And to reduce the child's opportunity to use additional resources. That's another reason we wanted to partner with them at the 6-12 level, where you're really holding the students accountable for demonstrating their learning on tests and assessments.
And just the last note, this coming Friday, we have a session in our auditorium. Parents can attend, where they can email questions. Principals will be there, and myself and Mary, we're going to answer questions from 9 to 10 for high school, middle school, and 10 to 11 for Memorial and Center. And then people that can't watch it live, we'll put it on our YouTube channel.
Good. Before you go on, Rodney, well, I passed by you. So with all the reopening and the hybrid and all that, how is your area panning out? And again, resources and staffing, how's it working in that area?
I think we're doing all right. You know, special education students are regular education students first. So they're part of the same survey. Parents get to choose when they want them to attend. You know, whether they have remote or distance learning or hybrid. For some of our high needs learners, we use state guidance and we offer opportunities to also participate 4 days a week if those needs fit. A lot of high hands-on kind of learning. So I'll give that to them. And then we received, there was a meeting last week, state guidance on how to deliver the additional services to meet all the IEP needs while students are in the hybrid, so the days they're not attending. So I met with our special education team leaders on Tuesday, and we actually put a note out in the all had one in the superintendent's update, the principal's visit, just on what that's going to look like. So each student's individual plan will have a learning model plan. So just anything that's going to, any service that's going to differ from what they're receiving now will be in that plan, just to show how it's going to differ. So, you know, they're going to would have had a reading class that will be maybe a Google Meets reading class with their peers, and then the same thing for our special ed students who are participating in remote learning. You know, we're going to provide the services as much as we can, as much as feasible. So, but we'll also have that in a learning model plan to demonstrate to parents that this is the service, this is the goal, and this is how we're going to address it during remote learning if you chose that option.
And how is the Learning Center functioning?
Good. We're considered high needs because of, you know, the nature of the program is for students with school avoidance and things like that. So we brought in additional Chromebooks and we're able to distance in there so students are able to attend the 4 days there as well. It's a small group.
Yeah.
12, no more than 12 kids. I think we're starting the year with 8 or 9 amongst the staff. Starting on good shape there as well.
Good. Thank you.
All right. We're going to share district goals and building goals in 12 minutes with you. Not in 12 minutes from now, but starting now, we can do this in 12 minutes.
Okay. I'm timing.
All right. Mary, you're up.
Okay.
Oh, here.
Thank you.
You do have a handout with the goals listed, and the principals are going to just briefly narrate them to you as we go through it. You guys can come right down front. We'll move right through these.
So it's really interesting. We were working on our East Hampton 2030 in the last week of February and wrote that vision and the goals for our learner statements just before everything shifted in our setting. And as we look back on that, it's interesting that we chose this opening doors theme because that's particularly poignant to us this September as we look to welcome our learners back. And to make sure that they truly have the opportunity to be inspired, to dream, discover, and achieve all that they can. And we know they've demonstrated tremendous learning and adaptability, but we're really excited to welcome back and ensure them exciting opportunities in the East Hampton Public Schools. East Hampton 2030 talks about their ability to be problem solvers, to be adaptable, to persevere and show a growth mindset. And I think as we look at our vision statement, these goals for our students have never been more poignant and more visible and more necessary. And we're proud of all that they've accomplished, but we look forward to working towards these goals in our schools this year. even with the adjustments we've had to make, even with the adaptability we've all had to demonstrate, we're really excited to not just get back and get everyone in, but to really have our thriving classrooms reaching for the best for all learners. As you look at the profile of the graduate, again, we've been working at this for many years, but you look at that sequence of growth that we're striving for, and you can see how appropriate this is and how necessary this is, whether we're thinking about a response to a pandemic or just all of the opportunities we want every learner from East Hampton to exit our schools with. We want them to be collaborative, we want them to be compassionate, to persevere, and ultimately to be active learners in any field that they choose. And we're excited to see this year unfold. In many ways, as I've been talking to teachers over the last couple of weeks, they're not talking about, I'm concerned about this. I mean, sometimes we're problem solving that way, but the number one thing is I can't wait to see the kids. I'm so excited to get back in the classroom with the students. And I've also seen a lot of our students either around town or coming and going, and they're saying the same thing. I was talking with a mother this morning, she said, my kids can't wait for school to start. So I think it's an exciting year for us in many ways. Our first goal this year, I think social emotional learning and the wellness of our students is always a high priority for the East Hampton Public Schools because we know that all learning is built on a foundation of emotional well-being. But this year, I think that it is our highest priority. It's always reflected in our relationship between our students and our teachers and the variety of services we provide. But this year, we consider it our ultimate responsibility to make sure that our students are reconnected with their schools, which is foundational to their identity and their personal development.
So as many things will look different within the school, there are some constants. And one of the things at Memorial School we take pride in is taking care of ourselves, others, and things. And this year, as with every year that I've been at the principal helm, we look forward to taking care of our staff and our students. And our priority this year is going to be on implementing second step social emotional curriculum. This will be a guaranteed experience for each of our learners in every classroom during a morning meeting that has been constructed in our schedule. We hope that they'll see improved social emotional competence and executive functioning skills, which will not only help with their behaviors, but also with their academics. And then in the vein of having high expectations for our students on the academic side, we're going to look for them to meet their individual growth targets on the iReady platform.
Social emotional learning is really the foundation, the bedrock upon which is everything that we do is built. So the key here is with fidelity, so that there is the social emotional learning that is guaranteed for each one of our students. And becoming part of a community is sometimes celebrating and recognizing those differences. That's going to be an area of focus for us this year as we look to implement some inclusive practices within our teaching and learning, as well as adding some of those resources into our classroom libraries and making sure that we do recognize those differences that bring us all together.
The middle school is really excited to also have Second Step kind of as a foundational program to all of the things that we have had thus far. You know, in the past, we have had an advisory program that has supported social and emotional learning. It's been more of kind of a grassroots effort by our staff and our students. Now we have something that can support that, and it will be a guaranteed experience for all of our students and our teachers. It also provides differentiated lessons and materials for our students, and it also has a digital component to it, so we're very happy about that. In addition, we want to make sure that we are always progress monitoring our students and having systems to kind of do that. So we will do that not only at the team level for our students, but we will also do that at a larger SAT, student assistance team type of system to make sure that nobody's kind of falling through the cracks, but we always have a really good pulse on where our students are.
And at the high school, it's like, you know, again, social emotional needs are very, very important to our students. So we have guaranteed advisory activities which will take place daily for all of our students, regardless of what group they're in. It's a dedicated time where these activities will talk about their social emotional needs through planned activities. And then we have a student assistance team, and we're going to continue to formalize our processes to communicate both the needs and concerns of our students to faculty, to staff, and then develop action plans to support our students. Many of our students are at different levels of learning and emotionality, and the goal is to ensure that all of our students are being successful.
I think if there's a theme across the 4 schools, it's really to ensure that we're proactive and that everyone has access to a guaranteed experience that promotes our instruction around social and emotional well-being, but at the same time that we're really monitoring our students and matching services that we have in the schools to individual student needs. And as we look on to our second goal, as much as we know that our students are coming back from a disrupted experience and that everyone had a very different experience, we also know that one of the things that's going to support our students is engaging in the curriculum and engaging in the development of their academic skills and content knowledge. That self-efficacy and the ability to, see a task through and access that new learning really builds confidence, and that's going to be really important to our learners. So we continue to have a focus on developing important and meaningful learning experiences for our students to ensure that we are reflective on our curriculum and continue to offer improvements towards excellence each year.
Mary talked about seeing things through, and I think these 2 goals here for Memorial speak to efforts that were already made in previous years. So both of these were introduced in some capacity at Memorial School by our teachers to our learners. I'm excited to share with you that we'll be implementing the Foundations program with Fidelity K through 3. It was some of my favorite visits to the classroom. We're watching the kids engage in this multisensory approach, really building their foundational skills in English language arts. So I'm excited to know that they'll be making gains through this part of our curriculum. And then our math workshop, we've been a workshop school for years in ELA. We introduced it in math last year. It was more so developing the systems and structures, and this year we're really looking to grow our skills with targeted, hands-on, student-centered approaches.
It's more important than ever to make sure that we're meeting our learners where they're at. We have a number of very powerful tools that will support the teacher to make sure that we're successful in all environments. And environments kind of takes on a completely new meaning as we head into the school year. So we want to be prepared for when the students are with us face-to-face, when we're in a synchronous environment, and when in an asynchronous environment. And the support of those digital tools are very powerful, and we want to make sure that we leverage that. And also through these different learning pathways, we want to make sure that students are aware that there will be an opportunity to share those skills and demonstrate a mastery of learning through that appropriate level of challenge, and that will be celebrated. So all of the work that goes into the learning in different environments will be able to be shared across with their peers as well as with the building through celebrations.
The middle school, we've done a lot of work with differentiated instruction. We feel like we want our students to get a depth of understanding with what they are doing. We feel like that is going to be the most critical kind of component of daily instruction. If you look at the leading scholars in differentiated instruction, they talk about content, process, product, and environment. Content is the what of what we are teaching. We want to utilize learning targets to kind of articulate a map for a student's daily lesson plan with what they are doing with content and skills. The process is really kind of the how, so we want to make sure that we are engaging our students right away at the beginning of the class period and engaging them in a do now type of activity to get them started. The product is really then demonstrating what they know. We want to make sure that we are connecting our assessments to our learning targets to really kind of map out how we want to adjust any instruction for them and provide feedback. And then with our environment, we always want to make sure that we're offering a positive kind of learning environment for all of them, whether that is, that environment can take on many forms this year. We want to make sure that we are planning for it.
And lastly, at the high school, our teachers throughout the year will continue to devise assessments and revise curriculum so that students are focusing on the specific knowledge set forth in the profile of a graduate for East Hampton. And then they will continue again to design, and the goal is to provide a minimum of 1 assessment per course that emphasizes deep understanding through interdisciplinary learning, project-based learning, and authentic experiences, again, allowing students to demonstrate mastery of our graduation requirements. And then, obviously, throughout the school year, part of that is tying it into our curriculum. So teachers will continue to review and revise curriculum, to ensure that students have multiple opportunities to meet these goals.
And our third goal this year, I think, as we look to really deepen our students' knowledge and understanding, is we have to be really responsive to them. Something that we grounded all of our teachers in, we always talk about it, but especially last spring, was the intentional cycle of teaching. That you start with a target in mind, you provide instruction, you monitor student performance, and you adjust as necessary. And this year, possibly more than ever, it's so important. We're keenly aware and intensely sensitive that we need to really be responsive to our students, that we need precision in that process, and really a surgical response to individual students' needs. And so we want to make sure that we're planning for structures that allow our teachers to reflect on student learning, to analyze data, and to provide appropriate resources as necessary.
So using data to drive decision-making is key to successful schools. Memorial's goal here is two-part. One is analyzing student performance data, and the other is looking at data that we're getting from our family through our parent feedback goal and being responsive to their needs. So we're looking forward to engaging in individual data meetings with our specialists in the building along with administration to look at performance data and set growth targets for each of our learners, and then develop instructional plans to help realize those goals. Our parent feedback goal is going to be analyzed by our teachers. We're going to look across that data and those survey responses and set individual teacher targets to improve communication with their families.
To follow along with that, boiling this goal down to 2 words is frequency and intentionality. So making sure that we are having frequent checks of understanding and making sure that there's an intentional plan for how we are going to improve. And within that plan, we need to make sure that it's team-based. So just because we're asking for this to happen more frequently doesn't mean that you're going at it alone. We want to make sure that we're wrapping our arms around the students to make sure they have the full support of our instructional specialists, classroom teachers, and support staff.
I think with the help of Mary and some additional specialists and staff members in the middle school, we've really gotten better at becoming a data-driven kind of environment for our teaching and our learning. We want to make sure that we continue to grow that, and make sure that we have a strong sequence of learning for all of our students. In addition to that, we want to make sure that we're communicating student performance effectively to all of our parents and our students. So we will continue working on some of our standardized grading practices, naming conventions that identify a relationship to a learning target that they may have been working on, making sure that we have common school-wide rubrics for active learning, homework, citizenship, so that a student is very aware of how they are performing on a daily basis, and also continuing to develop stronger assessment rubrics to communicate the performance of the student and how they are grasping some of the content and skills.
And at the high school, data is especially important as we see a changing changing environment for our students that are going on to higher education. Our teachers throughout the year will examine both course and grade level assessments to continue to support students. And as a school, we'll continue to work through the standardized measures that our students are still, the College Board has said we're going away from these things. We're taking a break. So we're still administering, the SAT, the PSAT, AP exams are still being given, and the next generation science standard assessments are still being given, on the state level. So our goal is to look at our data and devise strategies to improve instruction for all of our students.
I think one of the things that we felt was really important was that we were aligned across our schools, so that we do have some specialists or other aspects of our school community that move across the buildings and have these really clear goals this year, that we stay focused on making sure that we're taking care of our learners and developing those relationships, that we continue to grow into our teaching practices, and that we're really responsive to our learners. And whether we're at the beginning stages of a child's educational journey at Memorial School or preparing to help learners transition into adulthood and independence, we have the same goals, and we're really focused on those 3 core areas to make sure that we work as not just a leadership team, but as a school community, and everyone from classroom teachers to administrators knows where our focus is and where our hearts are with our students this year.
Questions?
I had a question. It just, at the high school, it just, something you said just sparked something in my head. The standardized tests like the SAT and PSAT, how do those look at this time?
Well,
Is it
currently the
possible?
College Board is offering sort of a makeup, I don't want to say a makeup opportunity, but an opportunity in October for the current seniors. So this current senior class, class of 2021, should have taken the SAT in March. So instead, they are now pushing that back or forward, however we're going to look at it. So in October, the 12th graders will have an opportunity to take the SAT as a standardized measure for, most seniors take it in the summer, this August or September, so they can do that on their own. They'll have an opportunity in October. The PSAT is still being administered. The dates are a little different because they don't have the capacity to administer all 4 tests in our school in one day. So what we're tentatively looking at is having the juniors take the PSAT, the seniors take the SAT, and the 9th and 10th graders would take their test on a different day. And the 9th grade window is very large. The PSAT for 10, 11, and the SAT, they tell us kind of, you get a couple days to pick from. For 9th graders, we have a very large window for them to take that. So we're still planning on administering it in order to move forward with our data process of 9 to 10 to 11 in SAT for seniors.
Thank you.
Anyone else? No. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Yeah. Very clear. Going into our unfinished business, we had 2 policies that we brought up at our meeting back in, when was that? Whatever that was. So they're here for the second read. The first one is 4118.231. Personnel certified and non-certified, and it's the whole, if I remember, the only change in there was adding the e-cigarettes into that. So policy committee.
There were a couple of ones. This was, we edited a few sections and we needed to add the CBD section.
Yeah. Any comments, questions on that policy? So do we have, just reading, motion to accept the recommendation of the superintendent of schools and the Board of Education Policy and Curriculum Committee and approve policy 4118.231, personnel certified, non-certified, alcohol, drug, and tobacco.
So moved.
And CO, Jim second. Any other comments? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay. And the second one for the approval is the social emotional learning. Policy committee, want to get that?
Yes. So this is a new policy. Let's see. This one is new, and some of the references are based on statute. There's wording that applies to, let's see, the program that we use, right? Is Second Step mentioned? in
Yeah,
this as well?
it doesn't mention
No,
Second Step
no.
particularly, that's the program that we use. But
That's
just
what
with
we
our
choose,
commitment this year to guaranteed social emotional learning, programming, and opportunities for teachers to really expand on that, we felt it was important to include a policy.
Okay. So as a second read, do we have a motion to accept the recommendation of the superintendent of schools and the Board of Education Policy and Curriculum Committee and approve policy 6142.102, social and emotional learning?
So moved.
Jim? Nancy K, second. Comments, questions there? All those in favor? Aye. Okay, so now we have our new business. We have 8 or so policies. So I'm going to turn this over to the policy committee
Just
Yeah.
to give you a
Give a
sense of
highlight.
it, yeah, this was our review of the 9,000 series.
Yeah.
So in a lot of them, it was just a few sentences to bring them up to speed where we're at.
Yeah, just to reflect how different ways that we actually operate, to take out antiquated language,
Like that
more
first one?
procedural
Yeah.
than I.
Yeah.
Most of these were all done in 2003. It was just a chance for us 17 years later to revisit and make sure our practice matches the policy. Or our policy now matches the practice.
I didn't realize we had, our policy used to say our public comment time is only 10 minutes.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Could you imagine that? Yeah. All right, so these will all be on the agenda at the next meeting.
If you wouldn't, rather than Rosemary printing all these
Yeah.
pages, if you would just save these.
Yep.
And if you have any questions, if you have questions tonight, we'll answer them, but if you want to bring any questions next time around.
Is there any questions on these as of now?
I think the biggest changes were just modernizing, you know, if
Yeah.
you look at 9326, it talked about tape recording and things like that.
Photostatic.
Yeah.
Email was first on the scene, so it makes it sound like email is this new thing. We just kind of just
Yeah.
brought them into 2020.
The agenda format reflects how we've been operating. That's a change. Yeah.
Okay. We will be prepared for those next time. So that goes all the way through. Future business, any new topics now that we're starting the new year? Things we want to address, we haven't, or revisit? No? And we have our personnel actions, audience of citizens. Were there any emails during our
You
meeting?
actually got two.
We got 2 emails.
One from Dr. Brown,
Okay.
who says, "Thank you to you and your staff for dealing with a difficult and changing situation." And Melissa Alford, in relation to the elementary PTO, I just wanted to thank all of you for your hard work and attention to detail. Please extend my gratitude. You've certainly had quite the summer making all this come to fruition. Also, the EHE PTO is so happy to have been able to help with purchases for this unique year. And our huge compliments to the elementary PTO that provided air conditioning units in every classroom K through 5 that did not already have air conditioning.
They also contributed funds towards bags for Chromebooks for our K-5 students, as those devices are going to move with the students, and we wanted to ensure that they were in an appropriate
Yeah.
case.
So a big shout out to our
Yeah.
elementary PTO.
They've been a true partner to us.
Well, thank you for those email public comments.
I know, very exciting now.
Yeah.
The system actually produced a couple of copies.
Yeah, other, Tanya? Yeah.
Just one.
Yes.
Was there ever a consideration to do face shields instead of masks?
We are providing face shields in addition to masks, but the DPH says face shields do not take the place of masks.
Yeah.
People who would like that additional layer are welcome to them. Some teachers may wear them depending on their role with students.
Irene, you have, yes?
Irene Cook, 11 South Lee Street. I had a question with regard to excused absences when students are required to be out of school for 10 to 14 days. If it's a case that a child is symptomatic and needs to stay home, is there still going to be requirement of doctor's notes for those absences to be excused?
The state has not updated us on new attendance procedures. They have indicated that they will be, but I would expect I would think that there would still be an expectation of documentation. But we'll be communicating with families as we receive more specifics from.
Just as somebody that works in the building, it would be nice to have, some sort of all clear,
Sure.
via a doctors knew.
Yeah, if we
Good point.
don't receive any other guidance from the State Department of Ed, we would continue with our current expectations documenting.
This is a moving target.
Yeah.
We'll open and we'll still be getting guidance from the state along the way. And we will respond and be ready to go.
We will. All right.
Thank you.
Calendar is attached. Thank you, everyone. Welcome back, or welcome continuing for all of you that have been working. Karen, how are you? Good. Yes. All right, with that then, motion to adjourn? Mark, second. Jim, all right. Have a good night. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.